It was not.
Okay, you're ready. Welcome, everyone, to the Lincoln City Council meeting of October 28, 2019. Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Followed by.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
One moment of silence. Thank you. I think he wants me to turn my mic on back there. Okay, in accordance with LB 898, a copy of the Open Meetings Act is posted in the back of the chambers. The order of business for the City Council is as follows. The clerk will call the items listed on the agenda under public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on the item should come forward after the clerk reads that item. The applicant and those in favor should speak first, then those opposed. The applicant may then make one short rebuttal. Each speaker should begin by stating their name, address, and whether you are speaking in favor or in opposition of the item. Testimony is limited to 5 minutes per speaker. After all public hearings, the council will vote on resolutions and items listed under third reading. On the second and last meetings of the month, immediately prior to the adjournment, anyone may speak on any issue not on the agenda for that date, nor plan for any future agenda, and tonight would be one of those nights. Will the clerk please call the first item of business?
Yes, and just a reminder to the public, due to the Veterans Day holiday, City Council will not meet on Monday, November 11th. We ask those of the general public coming forward to testify to please clearly state your name, spell your name, give your address, and sign in on the sign-in sheet lying on the podium. Testifiers may use either microphone, and there is a sign-in sheet by each microphone. We ask those individuals from city staff who are testifying to please state your name, title, and the department you work for. Our first item of business is our public hearing consent agenda, items 1 through 3. And is Nate Lowry here?
You can come on up too.
Yeah, come on up, Nate. Good evening. My name is Lynn Johnson. I'm the director of the Parks and Recreation Department, and it is my pleasure to introduce Nate Lowry, who is a proposed appointee to the Pedestrian Bicycle Advisory Committee. And he was appropriately attired for the appointment as well. Nate is a software developer for Silverhawk Aviation and has attended a couple of meetings, and we're pleased to have Nate's interest in the committee.
Well, thank you, Nate. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I am from Cairo, Nebraska, and moved here to go to college at UNL. Got a computer engineering degree. Worked at a number of software companies since then, and ended up now at Silverhawk Aviation, and have been biking commuting-wise for about 6 years here in town, and commuting and recreation both. So
That's great. That's great. Anybody else have any thoughts? Well, thank you, Nate, for willing to serve.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nothing else?
Nothing else. We can vote on these items.
Okay.
Items 1A and B were introduced by Washington.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by
Christensen.
Christensen.
Yeah. What's his name?
Okay.
yeah, good old what's his name?
Bowers,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Raybold. Oh, she's absent today. Shob,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0. Item 1C was introduced by Bowers.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Bowers, seconded by
Show.
Show.
Bay.
Bowers,
Yes.
Christensen,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Shob,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0. Next then are our public hearing resolutions. Those giving testimony are asked to come forward and raise their right hand for the clerk to administer the oath. After the oath, witnesses shall state their names and address. I'll call for A, manager application of Chad Carlson for Misty's at 6235 Havelock Avenue. Would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
Yes.
Thank you. Just state your name and address.
Chad Carlson, 6820 Ashbrook Drive.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I've owned Misty's for 18 years, and I just bought out my partner, so I'm changing the manager application to my name.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Thank you for coming down.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I would just make one comment. It was a spotless application.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
That's for other testimony.
Good.
For other testimony. He's saying you should ask, does anyone else in the chamber?
Oh, anybody else have any, like to come up and speak on this item? Seeing none. we
I
move on.
move approval of item 4A.
Been moved and seconded by Washington, the approval of 4A. Any discussions, comments? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Bowers?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0. Next then are public hearing resolutions. I'll call item 5A, approving the labor contract between the city and the Lincoln Police Union for a term effective August 22nd, 2019 through August 31st, 2022.
Good afternoon, Council. Doug McDaniel, Human Resources. We've concluded negotiations with LPU, the union that represents our police officers in the city. This is a 3-year contract for your consideration. Economic implications are a 3.25% increase for each year. We did adjust shift differential and longevity, which will take place in the second year of the contract as well. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
I just have a comment. I'm glad to see it only goes back to August.
Thank you very much. We worked very hard. Both parties did.
Yes, Benny?
Mr. McDaniels, there's always a concern about retention. Did you address anything, or did the union or yourself have any conversations about how we can retain the well-trained officers we have?
Well, certainly retention is always a consideration, not just for this union, but for all city employees. But particularly it is at the forefront of our minds with some of our surrounding municipalities and taking some of our more experienced people. And again, probably Chief Blymeister might be better equipped to speak to some of those issues, but the nature of policing is different in Lincoln than some of those other communities. We want to be on par from a salary standpoint, but we also have to balance that with the fiscal implications that we have as well. And so sometimes money is not the only issue involved in retention, but it has to be on par and has to be equitable across the board. So it was a primary discussion, but I think there's other things going on within LPD to address some of those retention issues as well.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Any other comments? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the audience would like to come up and speak on this item? Seeing none, please.
Okay, next item is 5B, an agreement with Aging Partners and Seniors Foundation for assistance with fundraising services and support for the various senior centers and aging programs for a term of 4 years.
Good afternoon, members of the council. My name is Randy Jones. I'm Director of Aging Partners for the City of Lincoln. The agreement before you is a 4-year agreement between Aging Partners and the Seniors Foundation, which basically formalizes our working relationship. There's no cost to the city. Actually, what we will do with this agreement is gladly receive funds raised by the Seniors Foundation for the services that Aging Partners performs. So I'd ask for your approval of that.
Yeah, good evening, Council. My name is John Krogan. I serve as the Seniors Foundation Board of Directors President this year. I've had the great honor of serving on the board the last 3 years. The Seniors Foundation mission is to enrich the lives of seniors by supporting aging partners. Just briefly, I thought I'd share a couple things we've been working on as the Seniors Foundation Board of Directors. Victory Park. Seniors Foundation serves as a leaseholder for Victory Park at the VA campus and has been an advocate for aging partners moving out to that campus in a one-campus model where we could both have services for seniors and veterans on that one campus. With the recent groundbreaking of the community-based outpatient clinic, that vision as well in motion now. We continue to work with Aging Partners and the developers through the nuances of moving Aging Partners out to Victory Park campus. We also are excited as a board. We recently have been raising funds for a van purchase for Aging Partners, and I think we'll be having that van maybe by the end of the week here. So that's been very exciting, and that van will be used to deliver food to senior centers throughout the city and the surrounding counties. And we expect, again, that will be here yet this week.
Thank you. Any questions?
Mr.
Yes.
Chair. No, thank you.
I just want to offer my support for the signed agreement. As these gentlemen know, and some of you know, I have a deep passion for seniors and Aging Partners, and I'm the past executive director for the Seniors Foundation, so the opportunity to work with both of these gentlemen and on the VA campus project. So I'm glad the agreement is being signed and presented to us. It's a long time coming, I know, so congratulations on this step and best wishes.
Thank you.
So thank you for being here.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, call the next item.
All right, next is
Anybody else in the audience would like to come forward and speak on this? Nope, seeing none, please move on.
Okay. Item 5C, accepting a report of due and pending claims against the city for October 1st through the 15th, 2019.
Hi, my name is Ann Fuller, F-U-L-L-E-R. My address is 440 Driftwood Drive in Lincoln, 68510. I just moved to Lincoln about 2 months ago and purchased the home on Driftwood. When I bought the house, they're doing some construction on it, I guess for water main. And every day I come home, it's something different. Sometimes I can park in my driveway, sometimes I can't, sometimes I can get on the street, sometimes I cannot. It caused a lot of problems while moving. I had pods that were delivered that weren't allowed to be delivered on the street. They had to leave, cost me extra funds in that respect. Had Nebraska Furniture Mart come down one day and they had marked off my street for that particular day too. They had to be returned. Had a landscaper come. I had to turn him away. The construction company that's working on it is not giving us any idea of when these things are happening. I came home on September 26th. The whole bottom part of my driveway was missing and it was roped off. So I parked on the street, which we're not supposed to be able to park on the street at all. So I parked on the street, went up and found a person that was working with the construction company and said, you know, this is getting to be ridiculous. I never know when I can park in my garage, when I can park on a street. You have to be starting to notify us of these different things. And I said, why? Where's the bottom of my driveway and when will it be replaced? They said it would be replaced the next day, and then it would be over a week before I could even pull into my driveway and park my car inside my garage. And I said, you know, what am I supposed to do with my car in that meantime? And they said, park on a different street, I guess. So I told them to please not do the driveway that morning because I had my son and 5 other kids coming home for the Ohio State game that weekend. So they said they would not do it. And I said, what am I supposed to do with my car tonight? They told me to park it on the street and that would be fine. The next morning I woke up and the whole right side of my, the mirror was broken. And unfortunately on my car, the mirror, the turn signal is in the mirror. So to replace the mirror is almost $1,000. I would not be parking on the street. I would be parking in my garage, or I would have made other arrangements to probably where to have parked my car if they would have given me notification that these changes were happening. And since that time, I have to admit there was 3 gentlemen that came to my front door that night and spoke to me. And they didn't do the driveway that day, and they did continue to start putting mail in our mailboxes, letting us know when these things were going to be happening. But up to this point, we were never notified when anything was happening, or again, if we could have been notified, I probably could have made other plans. But I would never have parked my car outside. I'm not sure if, was one of the construction workers or if it was another car. That I can't tell you. But I don't feel like it's my fault or my, expense because, again, I would not have been parking my car. So when I contacted the construction company, they told me this is what I had to do. I had to file this claim with the city because I think they're employed by the city. And so I did file that claim, and it doesn't ask for a lot of details, so I don't know that I just maybe didn't put enough details in the claim when I wrote it. But it was denied, and so I got the letter stating that if I wanted to fight the denial, I had to come here tonight.
Okay. Any other questions? Ms. Fuller?
I do.
Okay.
Are you claiming that the construction company damaged your mirror, or that the mirror was damaged because it was parked on the street?
You know, I don't know. I got home about 6 o'clock that night. They told me, they suggested where I park, which was just right across. There was no way to park in front of my house or the 3 houses by me because there was big piles of dirt. So they told me to park on the other side. So I kind of just did what they told me to do. So, I never went outside again until the next morning when I went to work at about 6:30 in the morning. Okay. So I honestly, I don't know. My problem, what I'm stating is, though, it would never have been parked out there. I would have made other plans if they had, initially told me, you're going to come home and your driveway is going to be missing.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'm sorry. And Ms. Fuller, you may have said this. So did you file an insurance claim before?
I did not, because my deductible's $1,000, and I went and, like I said, it stated in that letter that I should get like an estimate or something. So I went and got an estimate,
Sure.
and it was $1,006.76. So
I see.
I figured it would. Again, that would be all, if I paid my deductible, it would be all out of my pocket.
Right.
Except for the $6, right?
Yeah, the $6.76.
Right, I understand. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Fuller? Jeff, would you like to come up? Mr. Kirkpatrick? You have a question?
I do. I have.
Shob?
Jeff Kirkpatrick, City Attorney. Mr. Kirkpatrick, thank you very much for coming forward. Could you help us understand the process that happens here? How do your office investigates, or who does?
Sure, and I sympathize certainly with her situation. Working with, and I assume this was a city department contractor. I think the bulk of her complaint was with the level of communication, and so I would hope that people that have that sort of frustration will communicate with the city department if it's a city project. But her claim that is before you tonight is essentially for a hit and run. She parked on a public street. Someone during the course of the night, we don't know who, ran into her car, destroyed her rearview mirror, and now she's coming to the city for compensation. We don't insure all the vehicles that park on city streets. If, because of negligence, a city vehicle would hit a car, then we do pay out for that claim. But just because you're parked on a city street does not mean that we're insuring you or that we should pay for any damage caused to your vehicle.
The claimant's suggesting we denied her access to her property. Are we liable for that reason?
Well, we are not, and in this case, it was a contractor that worked for the city. So if they were negligent in some way, her claim would be against them. However, her claim is not that they were negligent in what they were doing. They had to close access to her driveway in order to do their work. Her claim is that it was a but-for test. She wouldn't have parked on the street if it had not been for the construction. And we don't question that. We don't question the damage that happened to her car. We don't question the estimate. We don't question the but-for claim. But in essence, what it comes down to is, are we responsible for a hit-and-run accident that happened on a public street? And I would tell you that legally we are not. That the reason why her car was damaged was because there was a careless driver who ran into her car and unfortunately then drove away. And we're not liable for that.
Thank you.
Can I ask him a question? No.
He used to make the rules here.
Oh.
Okay, I'll give you a chance.
Well,
One
I was
more.
just
Short rebuttal.
Not a rebuttal. You're saying, because when I asked the contract, the people that are doing the work, you're saying that I get to hold them liable. Is that what you just said?
No, I think the liability in this case lies with whoever hit your car. And then the unfortunate thing with these hit-and-run accidents is we don't know who that is.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you. We'll take this up when we vote. Thank you. Anybody else would like to come forward on our new and pending claims with the City of Lincoln? Seeing none, we can move on to the next.
Next is 5D, Comp Plan Conformance 19012, application of the Urban Development Director to amend the North 27th Corridor and Environs Redevelopment Plan to renovate and expand the Oriental Market by redeveloping 3 parcels of real estate on North 27th Street on property generally located at 610 and 630 North 27th Street.
Good evening, Dan Marvin with Urban Development. The project you have before you is on North 27th Street. It's the Oriental Market. And on October 2nd, they went to the Planning Commission. They got a vote of 6-0 in support of what you have before you today. And what you see on the project map is a vacant lot to the north of that project. And what they want to do is expand their business. They'll double the size of their building. They've been in business for 40 years. This would be a relatively small project, good for the neighborhood. Total cost of the project is about $1.6 million. It's an estimate of about $120,000 of tax increment financing, and the construction would start sometime after this approval. Tom Houston is here today representing the developer. Let him have a word here. Do you have any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Marvin? Okay. Mr. Houston?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the council. My name is Tom Houston. My address is 233 South 13th Street, Suite 1900 here in Lincoln. Appearing before you tonight on behalf of Stone Elephant LLC, which owns and operates the Oriental Market at 610 North 27th Street. With me in the back of the room is John Chan, the owner of the Oriental Market. I'm sure he's interested in what's transpiring up here. The item on your agenda is really the plan amendment. Mr. Marvin correctly described the project. It's a doubling of the existing footprint from 5,500 square feet to approximately 11,000 square feet of the Oriental Market. If you look at the USDA map, this is a food desert, and we're expanding food opportunities in this area, which is a good thing for the community. This project, as Mr. Marvin described, is an investment of over $1.6 million. We've sized the tax increment financing on a very conservative basis at $120,000 because what the project involves is an investment of a new store of approximately 5,500 square feet and remodeling of the existing store. You don't get the same benefit from a tax increment financing perspective when you deal with a renovation of an existing building. The other thing I would point out on the plan amendment that's on your agenda, the cost-benefit analysis is designed to look at the impacts of the project on certain aspects. One of them is the tax shift, and the tax shift on this project would be approximately $12,000 per year. That would be the incremental tax amount created by the project. The second impact that we are to examine is on the public infrastructure. There's really no municipal expenditures required because of this project. The next impact is really on the employment. The expansion of the store will increase employment opportunities within the North 27th Street area. The next item to look at the impacts is effect on student population, and this commercial project, this retail project, will have no impact on the student population. Mainly, this will increase the food opportunities within the North 27th Street area. I think the schedule moving forward is we're working on a redevelopment agreement. We hope to have that back in front of you in the month of November, and we hope to have construction started as soon as possible thereafter. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Houston? Seeing none?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anybody else in the audience that'd like to come forward on this item?
Mr. Chair, yes, forgive me for interrupting, but I do have a question for Mr. Marvin, if he
Okay.
will yield for a question.
Sure.
Mr. Marvin, I was reading the summary, and I'm a little concerned about parking and getting in and off of 27th Street. 27th Street, has there been any conversations about that?
We have had conversations with LTU about the driveway access there, and I think there's a deviation request to be able to keep that driveway access open. There will be additional parking that will be created by this development as they move north into the vacant lot. And we support the deviation request because if you notice, T Street is
just to the south of the
is
building.
just to the south, And the alternatives, I think, getting into this property would be to move traffic onto T Street, which is just a small movement south and could create congestion issues at T Street as well. So that's why we support keeping the access open.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? Again, anybody else from the audience? Seeing none, let's move on.
All right, next is item 5E, approval of amendment number 1 to the conditional annexation agreement for East A Street Coalition, approved as resolution A-91354 on November 5th, 2018, between the city, Heritage Lakes LLC, BCLINC LLC, at B&J Partnership, David John LLC, Christopher Kidwell, Homestead Acres, and East O Realty Company to reflect changes in the development plans for property generally located on the north and south sides of A Street between 94th and 98th Street.
Tim C., City Law Department. A lot of names, but really what we're here for is an annexation agreement that was done a while back for property out at approximately 94th and A Street. That original agreement included the financing and construction of a pump station. I think developer has gone through a process and determined that it would be more cost effective to simply build the sanitary sewer at this location. And so the amendment is to for the developer to fund that and then be reimbursed at a later time rather than building the pump station that was previously contemplated. And other than that, I think those are the substantive changes to the agreement. I'll take any questions you might have.
Does anyone have any questions? Mr. Shope?
Yes. This is going to be, the pump station was only meant to be temporary, and is it correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we're just going to skip this and go to the full long-term solution.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yep.
And this is just an amendment to that annexation agreement.
Just an amendment to the annexation
Okay.
agreement.
Any other questions? Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Mr. Houston?
Mr. Chair, members of the council, again, Tom Houston, 233 South 13th Street, Suite 1900. I'm appearing before you today on behalf of the 7 prime parties that really comprise the East A Street Coalition. I view this amendment doing 3 things. It substitutes the manner of the sanitary sewer treatment. It clarifies the Kidwell property, which is located south of A Street. Portion of it is really in the Wandering Creek area that is being annexed or has been annexed and being developed, and a portion of it's in the East A Street because of the ridge line. It just clarifies for impact fee reimbursement purposes which property goes into which area, which is greatly beneficial for the LTU department. And the last thing this amendment does is it deals with the puts a detention cell in the right-of-way of the Mopac Trail in order to preserve a huge tree stand, which everyone wanted to do. And so that's the other thing. My main purpose coming up here tonight is that we're going to have a second amendment coming forward and probably in a couple months to deal with the street improvements in A Street because of the sales tax being generated. The A Street is one of the targeted streets that's going to be for improvements, and we hope to have that second amendment in a month or two, would be my guess. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Houston?
I have a question, Mr. Houston. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you explain a little bit about the detention pond and how you came to the decision, how the group came to the decision to put the detention pond where they did, and have all parties been satisfied?
Yeah, the coalition worked closely with Parks and Recreation Department in order to preserve an existing tree stand that's on the private property. We decided to reach a compromise on the detention cell, and because the right-of-way for the trail is a large area there, and the detention cell contemplates, or the agreement contemplates the city's granting an easement for the detention cell, but the private parties are still going to maintain the detention cell. It's not the city's obligation to maintain it, it's just a location. And the sole purpose was to preserve that tree stand along the Mopac Trail.
Okay. And will the trail ever be closed during construction, and for how long will bicyclists and pedestrians be,
a lot of the grading's already been done, so I really don't think there's going to be much closure of the trail. Originally, the trail was going to be relocated. That was contemplated, but that was determined it was unnecessary, so the trail's staying where it is.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Houston? Seeing none. Anybody else would like to come forward to speak on this item? Seeing none, let's move on.
All right, I'll go on to item 5F, appeal of Pam Dingman of Planning Commission's approval of special permit 19038 to allow for the development of a community unit plan with waivers to sidewalks, street trees, street lights, and block length on property generally located at 110th Street and Saltillo Road. I will note for the record that just prior to coming to the meeting today, I did receive an email that the applicant wishes to request we continue the public hearing until November 18th. So they
Okay.
continue working.
We'll continue the public hearing. Well, no, we need to vote on
We need
that.
to vote on that, yeah.
But if
Okay.
anybody is here to
But if
testify,
anybody,
they
yeah,
can
if anybody is
do
here
so.
to speak on this, they could come forward at this point.
Mr. Chair, I move that we delay with public testimony this item until November 18th.
Second?
Been moved by Mr. Christian, second by Washington.
Nope.
Ward.
Ward.
Okay. Any other comments on delaying this? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Bowers?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0.
Okay, let's move on to.
Go on to 5G, Comp Plan Conformance 19008, approving an amendment to the Lincoln Center redevelopment plan by adding the Campion Housing Project for construction of a 7-story, 340,000 square foot student housing building with covered parking and other amenities on property generally located from 9th to 10th L to M Streets.
Good evening, Dan Marvin with Urban Development. I'm here to talk about another project between 9th and 10th Street. This project was before the Planning Commission on September 4th and received a 9-0 vote that it was in conformance with the comprehensive plan. The project area is between 9th and 10th and L and M, so here would be M Street and L, and 9th and 10th. We've extended the borders of the project area all the way up to O Street to address deficiencies that we have on streetscape and sidewalks so that we can provide a better environment. The development, or the developers, are Campion from New Orleans and Draper Kramer from Chicago. They plan on building a 7-story, 340,000 square foot housing residence, which will include an additional 259 parking stalls on its own site. The project, after review, is consistent with the Lincoln City redevelopment plan, the 2018 downtown master plan, and the 2040 comprehensive plan. Streetscape improvements not only along abutting the project, but also extending up to 9th and on 9th and 10th Street and O would be included in this. The developer presented to the Urban Design Committee on September 3rd, does need to come back to Urban Design and show additional renderings of their project before it comes back to City Council. The developer is investing $37 million on this project, which will leave a sum of not to exceed $5.5 million in tax increment financing for this project. We have David Levy and Carter Page here available to address you as well. Do you have any questions?
Any questions for Director Marvin?
Okay.
Seeing none?
Good evening, council members. David Levy, 1700 Farnham Street. As Mr. Marvin mentioned, also with me is Carter Page from the developer. As Mr. Marvin also mentioned, this is an investment of over $37 million to redevelop a downtown block, or 3/4 of a downtown block that is currently largely vacant. I think otherwise Mr. Marvin described the project well. Happy to answer any questions that you might have. Carter, I don't know if you have anything else.
I don't think so. Any
Okay.
questions?
Do we have any questions for Mr. Lee or Mr. Page? Yes.
What would you tell us is the projected schedule if everything goes according to plan?
So we hope to be back here on November 25th for a public hearing on the redevelopment, or the redevelopment agreement and a proposed alley vacation. And then we would move forward with that construction in 2020?
Yeah, with the expectation of actually 2022 would be when it would be open for the students.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to come forward on behalf, speak on this item?
Good evening. My name is Ann Post. I'm an attorney with Baylor Edmond Law Firm, and I'm here today on behalf of B&J Partnership that owns properties adjacent to this redevelopment project those properties are located at 926 L Street and 327 South 10th Streets. I'm here today to testify in a neutral capacity. B&J Partnership is supportive of the overarching concept of this project. However, we do have concerns about the effect that the alley vacation is going to have on access to those adjacent properties. We have made the redeveloper aware of this, as well as the Urban Development Department, the Planning Department, and the and LTU. We've been in continual conversations with them. We have ongoing discussions for addressing this, and at this point we're optimistic that we can reach an agreement and get this resolved before this project comes before you in the form of approval of a redevelopment agreement, tax increment financing bonds, and also the associated alley vacation. So with that, if no one has any questions, thank you very much.
Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have
Yes.
a question. Ms. Post, could you please point out on the map that's on the screen right now where your client's properties are?
Yes, I
Or
will.
Any other map you choose.
Okay. It's a little hard to see on this map, but we have this right here, this piece, and this piece. So this is owned under separate ownership.
All right. Thank you very much.
Any other questions for Ms. Post? Thank you. Anybody else would like to come forward and speak on this item at this time? Seeing none.
All right, if not, we can vote on these items. Item 5A, the labor contract with the Lincoln Police Union, introduced by Washington.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Washington, seconded by Christensen. Any comments, questions? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Bowers?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0. Item 5B is the agreement with the Seniors Foundation, introduced by Washington.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Washington, seconded by Ward. Any comments, questions, thoughts? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Bowers?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0. Item 5C is the report of new and pending claims against the city, introduced by Washington.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Washington, seconded by Christensen. Any comments, questions? Yes, Mr. Christensen.
This is, on a regular basis, the hardest thing that I've done on the council is to make these kind of judgments. To Ms. Fuller, I'll say, welcome to Lincoln. Welcome to my neighborhood. You live around the corner from me. The concern the council has had historically, I'm sure this council still has, is while we feel what's good for you and what's going on, we really do. If we set a precedent, then we would be paying out on things that where the city actually has no obligation to pay, and it would become problematic very quickly. So I intend to vote to accept this report.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Bowers?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Schob? Ward?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0. 5D is Comp Plan Conformance 19012. This is the application of urban development to amend the North 27th Corridor and Environs Redevelopment Plan, introduced by Washington.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Washington, seconded by Christensen. Any comments on this? Thoughts?
My friend Roy would often say this is a good thing. I'm going to steal that from him.
It's a good thing.
It's a good thing.
It's a good thing.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts, words of wisdom? Okay, seeing none, please call the roll.
Bowers?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0. Next is item 5E, amendment number 1 to the conditional annexation agreement for the East A Street Coalition, introduced by Washington.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Washington and seconded by Schob. Any comments, thoughts on this project? Okay, seeing none, please call the roll.
Bowers?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0. Item 5F was continued to November 18th. Item 5G, Comp Plan Conformance 19008, amending the Lincoln Center redevelopment plan for the Campion Housing Project, introduced by Schob.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Schob, seconded by Christensen. Any comments, thoughts, Mr. Christensen?
This is a good thing.
There he is.
Any other questions or thoughts at this time? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Bowers?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0. Next then are our public hearing ordinances second reading. Item 6A, text amendment 19006, application of Christian retirement homes to amend section 27.06.020 entitled classification of use types, section 27.63.210 entitled elderly and retirement housing, section 27.63.530 entitled healthcare facilities residential, section 27.63.680 entitled the sale of alcohol for consumption on the premises, and section 27.63.685 entitled the sale of alcohol for consumption off the premises, to allow both on and off-sale alcohol as a permitted accessory use to healthcare facility, residential, and elderly and retirement housing.
Good afternoon or evening now, council members. My name is Kent Seacrest, representing Eastmont in regards to their expansion and updating plans on its residential healthcare elderly retirement facility project at 36315 O Street, right across the street from Gateway Shopping Mall. The proposed amendment allows the sale of alcohol on and off the premises as permitted accessory use only when you have a residential healthcare facility or you have an elderly retirement house facility. Residential healthcare and elderly retirement facilities are residential in nature, usually located in residential neighborhoods via special permit. But in 1994, when we adopted a bunch of the alcohol provisions, we made it illegal to have alcohol in a residential district, except for golf course. Drinking on the golf course is the only exception. So this would be your second one that we are seeking. Eastmont plans are to only sell alcoholic beverages by the glass and only to its residents and guests, and associated with its restaurants and its food services. So no sale by the glass to outside third parties are our plans. We would not be offering bottle or package sales either. This population, as you know, is a very special population to our community, but at times has limited mobility as it relates to the ability to get out to shop for full range of services that the rest of us can do. So we see this amendment as affording senior population of these facilities access that other residences with mobility currently get to enjoy, and that is going out and having a glass of wine. This time, though, they'd be able to do it in their own residence and their own restaurants on the Eastmont campus. The Planning Department recommended support of this text amendment. The Planning Commission voted 6-0 for this text amendment, and Eastmont had a neighborhood meeting, and there was no one in attendance had any objections to the Eastmont proposal. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Seacrest?
Could you explain, Mr. Seacrest, the off-sale portion of this?
This ordinance, when we first went through the process, we didn't know how we were going to license the premise. And we thought that if we did not license the upper floors where people lived, we wanted to give them the ability to, in the gift shop area, to be able to buy alcohol and take it up to their residence. We subsequently talked with the Nebraska Department of Liquor Control Commission, and we decided we can license the whole premise, including the upper floors. So now we can just have them buy alcohol by the glass and take it directly on up, or buy a bottle and take it on up to their upper residence. So we don't need to call it off sale. But
thank you.
You bet.
Yeah, thank you. That was my question too.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Oh,
Ms.
Mr.
Ford,
Schub?
we'll start with you.
Okay, thank you. No, not a question so much as just a comment. Again, as a senior care supporter and an approaching baby boomer in assisted living or other facilities, I just want to lend my support for this change, because I think baby boomers that will someday, sooner than we think, be in facilities such as this will want their glass of wine. I don't think that's a lot to ask for this special population. So I just want to lend my support for this change in these sort of facilities in our community. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
I would
Mr.
like
Christensen.
to comment that while I don't drink, I understand some people do, and they enjoy it. And this, to my mind, is nothing other than drinking in your own home, because this is where they live. It's just a lot bigger than my house.
Okay.
Good point.
Any other thoughts or questions? Seeing none.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Anybody from the audience would like to come forward and speak on this item? Seeing none, let's move on.
All right, I'll call item 6B, street name change 19005, application of Russell and Renee Anderson to rename South 85th Street to Fireside Place.
Good evening, City Council members. I'm Russell Anderson, 3700 South 84th in Lincoln, Nebraska. And we're here to talk about a street name on a new development on the west side of Firethorn. There would be no cost to the city. When the plat was laid out here, Tralee Street was extended to the west to the new street in question here, which was named South 85th. It is only 50 feet east of current 84th Street. It typically, I think a block is like 400 feet. It's only 720 feet in length. It serves 3 lots, an existing house that we purchased, and 2 lots that may or may not be built upon. The developers are Big Construction, Boyd Batterman and Craig Geese, and they have signed off on there with no objections to this naming of streets. And then a little confusion here, if this street would go in place at South 85th, there are 2 mailboxes up on Firethorn Lane with the current address of 8435 and 8441, and that would be east of what this would be 85th Street. I think that would cause some confusion. The street naming committee, they did deny this request, but then it has to go in front of you of the board here. And some of their reasons, and I never did see their report for the denial. I've never seen their reasons, what they had for that. I think some were concerned about the confusion of North-South Street being a name street, and they might have trouble finding it, but I think with today's technology and 911 that they could find that. In fact, when we moved into this home on or about the first week in July, and the 84th Street driveway was removed, they gave us a temporary driveway of just crushed rock up through a dirt path, and we called and reported that to fire and rescue, and they said that would be no problem, that there'd be no problem at all getting to your home in the emergency of fire or medical. And so they could find a way across a rock road. I think they could find Fireside Place is what we're proposing to name this street. They said that also they said that they did not like name streets between existing streets, and they used the example of Elmwood Avenue between 32nd and 33rd. And I understand that there would be no number available between that, but I found actually well over close to 100 streets in Lincoln that are north and south with a name street, and I've just chosen 3 here for tonight. One is Goodhue, just right over here. South of A Street, it's 15th Street. North of A Street, it turns into Goodhue and goes to the state capitol. And it's 13th, 14th, Goodhue, 16th. And then up over in the East Campus area, there's Idlewild, and that's at roughly 36th and Holdridge. And it lies between 35th and 37th and goes from Holdridge south to Apple. And then it turns back into 36th Street. And then one that we're pretty all familiar with is Tucson, and that goes for a mile long from Havelock to Adams, and it lies between 58th and 60th. And once you get south of Adams, it turns into 59th. And they haven't they've been there for years, and to my knowledge, hasn't created any confusion or trouble finding them with rescue. And then they said the word place, the suffix place, is typically for used on cul-de-sacs and whatnot. We're okay with that. We could call it street or avenue or anything that the city council or city planning would be acceptable. As far as a cost to the city, there would be none. We paid the $412 application fee. I was told there's something like $300 for the signage, but that is going to be covered by the developers, as there is no sign, has not even been put up yet. So the sign has not even been manufactured yet. And so there would be no cost there. I'll leave it at that. Is there any questions?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
I have
We have some questions. We'll start down here.
Well, I have a statement I want to make more than anything else. So you mentioned Tucson, and fun fact about Northeast Lincoln, Tucson is the only street name that survived when Havelock was annexed into Lincoln. So Tucson's been there even before Havelock was a part of Lincoln.
That's true.
So just a little bit of fun Northeast Lincoln trivia for everyone.
Well, I'm a North Lincoln man myself too, and I travel that street almost on a daily basis. Coming into Lincoln, and it's one of the nicest streets in town with the corridor in the middle, and it's a beautiful street. I'm glad that we as a city has maintained that.
Mr. Christian?
Could you talk a little bit about the motivation behind this request?
No real motivation, just that we don't feel 85th is an appropriate address. Hence, with the 2 mailboxes that are east of what would be currently, if you look at it from an aerial view, and they have a smaller designation of 30 or 8435, 8441. That would be a little confusion if you're coming in on Firethorn Lane, so to speak, and there's already that, and then there is no 85th Street, and you come back and it's a street further to the west. As far as personal motivations or anything like that, we have none. We really couldn't come up with a reason to use 85th Street. We come up with Fireside because it's the west side of Firethorn is where that name the genesis of that come from.
Any other questions or thoughts?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Just, I know you said you weren't concerned about public safety.
Yes.
Could you reiterate how I am concerned about public safety?
I'm very concerned about it. That's why we notified them. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask again how you found out. I'm concerned about them finding you with that address. So tell us again how you were assured that that's not going to be a public safety issue for Fireside Place.
Well, there's a new fire station literally just built 2 blocks away from here, so I think they'd be pretty familiar with it. But also, with the technology we have nowadays with the 911 and some of the GPS and all that, when you call in there and you tell them you're at 123 Oak Street, it automatically sends you right to that. And the shortest possible distance to it. So in this case, they would type in 3800 Fireside Place. It would give you direct route to this. And living on this street, I would be very concerned. I got an 85-year-old mother who may or may not move in with us someday. I'd be very concerned that medical personnel could get there. Or worse, a fire or something like this, you'd want immediate response and not having them driving all around looking for that. So I am very concerned about those issues. So thank you.
Thank you. Maybe I misunderstood. I thought you'd had conversations perhaps with Lincoln Fire and Rescue that you had verified that would not be a problem.
The only thing, when we moved in there and when they took out our driveway along 84th Street, we were told it'd be in your best interest to notify the public services how to get to your place. Although the mailbox still sits out there on 84th Street today, and we have to dodge traffic or pull up onto the sidewalk to get our mail because we have no street or name yet, so to speak. But they assured us that to comfort us that they would have no problem finding this to get to our house while we're living there, while we're in development, because this is still all under development here yet.
I understand. Okay. Then I would just comment for your information that in terms of a precedence, so many people would love, I live on a cul-de-sac and I don't like the name of my street either, particularly, but just from my own point of view, just to comment so you would understand that I would feel that we would be setting a precedence if we were to grant you this. So,
but it's not that I don't like, it's not that I don't like 85th Street. We just don't think it's a correct address.
Okay.
And with the mailboxes that are already currently in place that are of lower designation, that would be east of this, that should have a higher designation. So I don't know if you're going to rename the mailboxes and all that. It gets into a little bit of a cluster then. So, yes. Any more questions?
Yes.
I do have a question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Anderson, are you also agreeing with the U.S. Postal Service that changing your name, you're willing to go to a combined box unit instead of an individual mailbox?
I didn't say that.
Had you seen their comments?
No. I haven't seen any comments.
Well, a number of departments review this, and everyone recommended denial, all staff Lincoln departments, and then the post office was given an opportunity, United States Postal Service was given an opportunity, and they said should the name be changed to a different name, then they would ask that it be a centralized box unit instead of individual boxes on each address. And I was curious how you would feel about that happening.
I guess I have no preference one way or another. I prefer a personalized mailbox, but I have no problems with that, Councilwoman.
Okay.
Just one comment about emergency services. I'm not sure about police vehicles, but I know that our fire trucks actually do not have GPS in them, and it's just a PDF map that has to get pulled up that they have to locate.
Okay.
So they don't have a GPS
I might
to
be
type into. Yeah.
I might be, misspoken a little bit like that, but
yeah, I just kind of want to throw that out there for you.
Sorry about that.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay. Thank you for testifying. I'd like to have David come up. Mr. Carey, Planning Director.
David Carey, Director of the Planning Department.
Hi, David. This is a private road, is that correct? It's a blue sign, it's not a green sign?
Actually, it's identified, yes, as a private road, but I think this image would probably help clarify some things too.
Okay, go ahead and put it up. So this portion, this 85th Street, the new portion down there, is that a public street that will, or is it a private street?
This is identified as a private street.
Okay, so it's not even a public street.
I will point out that we have a final plat already in to the north here, identified as 85th Street as well. And then as this has come through the approval process, the intention has been to continue 85th Street all the way through. There is an intervening undeveloped area, but with the intention of eventually something happening there, if and when, that connection would be made and we would have a continuous street.
Would it become a public street at that time?
Well, not necessarily, but.
Okay. Because we have a lot of private areas with street names that are a lot of not following along. Actually grew up in a few, so.
And I would also point out that there is a comment earlier about there being many named north-south streets throughout the city. It has been a practice for many years now to limit that, and there are a lot of reasons for that, and one of the main reasons is for the purpose of public safety response. And it was mentioned a little bit earlier, but I would point out that our street naming committee did vote against this, recommending denial, I should say. That includes the fire department and the police department, along with the county engineer, Lincoln Transportation and Utilities, and Building and Safety and Planning. And we know that we have had a few of these come up before us in the recent past. Cattle Drive and Discovery Drive up in the northwest area of the city, and that one come back around full circle and cause some confusion by making that change and then a request to change it back again. I just point that out as a very recent example of why we are proposing or suggesting to deny this request.
Were those public streets or were those private streets?
Those are public streets, I believe.
Okay. So
And again,
actually, this will be owned by the property owners, right? The street will be.
I would have.
Yeah,
them
the
Yes.
property
Our
owners will own
association.
the street. Okay.
Can I make one comment about this, the Cattle Drive street thing? I seen that in the report somewhere where that was in question. I don't think that really is in the same playing field as what we're talking about. One, it's a private street as opposed to a public street. But if I recall or serves me right, Cattle Drive was already used in a residential development, I think in Northeast Lincoln. And I think it served like 4 or 5 residents up there. When the cattle company bought this piece of ground, I think it was called Discovery Drive, and they come up with the brainchild to call it Cattle Drive for their personal benefits. So they had to petition to get this other street renamed in Northeast Lincoln. I think they called it Mustang Drive now, and do a whole cluster. So it was actually, you had to redo 2 different streets. So this is just a 720-foot strip, private street, 50 feet east of 84th Street. And the property in the middle there is owned by Mary Reckmeyer. And talking to her, she's about 60 years old, and she plans on going out of there, I don't know if I can quite say it, but almost feet first on there. So it's going to be a while before she is going to redevelop that place.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any
Thank
other
you.
questions?
I have a question for Director Carey. Mr. Carey, can you tell me north and south of the Firethorn development? I know that there's a habit of having, making sure that streets can connect up to each other on the other side of a development. And I'm curious, does 85 continue on north and south of Firethorn?
It does not continue north. At this time, there's no plans to continue it south, although that could change, but at this time, the one north, that has not been set up that way.
Okay, thank you.
It won't ever go out to Pioneer Street because Highmark Church is right there. Or, yeah, Highmark Church. St. Mark's Church. St. Mark's
Any other
Church.
questions? Seeing none? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
That ends our, anybody else in the audience that would like to come forward on this item? Seeing none,
All right,
let's
that
move on.
concludes our public hearing portion. We can move into the voting session. Ordinance's third reading. Item 7A, change of zone 19021, application of SB Partners and Lincoln Investment LLC for a change from H3 Highway Commercial to B2 Planned Neighborhood Business on property generally located at North 27th Street and Fletcher Avenue, introduced by Ward.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Ward, seconded by Christensen. Any comments, questions, thoughts? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Bowers?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0. 7B is the related use permit 19013 for North 27th and Fletcher Avenue, introduced by Ward.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Ward, seconded by Schob. Any questions, thoughts? Please call the roll.
Bowers?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0. Item 7C is approving the Nebraska Innovation Campus Hotel Project Redevelopment Agreement, introduced by Ward.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Ward, seconded by Christensen. Any questions by the council? Seeing none, let's call the roll.
Bowers?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0. Item 7D, amending the fiscal year 1920 CIP to authorize and appropriate $5.6 million in TIF funds for the Nebraska Innovation Campus Hotel Project, introduced by Ward.
So moved.
Second?
Been moved by Ward, seconded by Washington. Any comments? Is this a good thing?
Has potential.
It's on the way.
Okay, please call the roll.
Bowers?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0. Item 7E is authorizing the issuance of tax allocation bonds for the Nebraska Innovation Campus Hotel Project, introduced by Ward.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Ward, seconded by Christensen. Any other comments, questions? Please call the roll.
Bowers?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0. Item 7F, amending section 9.36.110 of the Lincoln Municipal Code relating to firearms in unattended motor vehicle unlawful to prohibit the storage of unsecured firearms in unattended motor vehicles, introduced by Christensen.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved by Christensen, seconded by Schob.
Now, we do have,
I'd like to introduce an amendment. Councilwoman Raybold was unable to be here today and asked, and I said it would be my honor. Her amendment, I think, was brought forward last week. Teresa, do you have a copy
yes,
of that?
it's a motion to amend number 1 to accept substitute ordinance. And this is to remove the possibility of jail time for the misdemeanor and to clarify some definitions.
Can move.
I'll second it for purposes of discussion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. We amend with amendment number 1.
I think one of the other things in this amendment number 1 is it specifically states that for a pickup truck, you'd have to have a metal box affixed to the vehicle, and that essentially that would, it also includes in definitions issues about SUVs and station wagons and hatchbacks, so those are not included in the definition. that would include a trunk. I'd also like to point out that I will be bringing forward motion to amend number 2, and motion to amend number 2 basically says you can keep your firearm in your car as long as the car is completely secured and the weapon is out of sight from outside the vehicle. And also, my motion will include taking it to a misdemeanor for the first 2 offenses and remove the misdemeanor for the first 2 offenses and cause it to be an infraction, and then misdemeanor for third offense. And my point being, explaining what my motion is going to be, is essentially the 2, motion to amend number 1 and motion to amend number 2, are incompatible with each other. They both really can't exist in the ordinance at the same time.
Any other comments?
For discussion's sake, I'd like to add my voice to this, Mr. Chairman, if that's...
Yes, you may.
Thank you. I certainly see the conflict in Section 1, in yours and in Councilwoman Raybould's amendment, which is now my amendment. But I think the Section 2, removing jail time, moving it from a misdemeanor to an infraction, does the same thing that the amendment I brought forward does.
It's similar in the fact that there's no jail time involved, but having a misdemeanor is an actual criminal record.
Yes, it
whereas
is.
an infraction is not.
Yeah, I could support your new amendment that brings the first 2 offenses to infractions and then a misdemeanor on the third.
Any other thoughts?
A little procedural, so we're going to work on the first
Yeah, we're gonna vote on motion
to substitute motion to amend. That language is wrong, but.
Well, it's a substitute ordinance.
Okay.
So if
For motion to amend number 1.
correct.
Motion to amend number 1, that's correct.
So not Roy's.
Not mine.
No.
Not mine at this time.
Yeah.
We'll vote on this one, and then I will move my substitute ordinance.
But
And I
then
will
yours,
offer a friendly
then there's no
amendment.
point in voting on motion to amend number 1.
Yes.
Well,
We
we
can't
have a
have
motion-
2
We
ordinances.
have a motion and second, if it either has to fail or pass.
Thank you, Mr. Kirkpatrick.
Jeff Kirkpatrick, City Attorney. We did prepare, at the direction of council members, 2 separate substitutions entirely to this ordinance. You can, of course, at the pleasure of the body, make different amendments. You could, for example, adopt amendment or substitute amendment number 1, but you wanted to make that an infraction, so then you could amend that amended ordinance and make it an infraction by taking the language from amendment number 2. That would be an option, just to make it a little bit more confusing for those watching at home. I'm not suggesting you do that, but that would be an additional option that the body has tonight.
But I think the question here now is, we've had a motion, it's been seconded, we've discussed it, we need to vote.
Right.
Yes, I mean, you could theoretically adopt the First Amendment and then adopt the Second Amendment, but then
The second
it
one
raises the question why
supersede.
you'd adopt the first one. You might as well just adopt the second one if that was the pleasure of the body.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kirkpatrick.
One
Before
more
you sit
question
down-
for you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. The clerk pointed out some confusion. If we're going to look at the second one while we deal with the first one, we have a motion and second on the floor. We have to deal with that. Is that?
Yes, you don't have the choice of ignoring amendment number 1 and going on to amendment number 2. You have to deal with the amendment that's on the floor.
But Sandra could withdraw her motion to amend number 1.
I don't believe she can. I believe it's
It's
part of
owned by the body at
Owned by
this
the body
point.
at this point.
Okay, very good. Thank you for clarifying that.
Okay, so we have motion to amend number 1, which is substitute ordinance for this. And then we've had
a healthy discussion.
We've had a discussion. Anybody else would like to discuss any further? Seeing none, let's vote on motion to amend number 1.
Bowers,
No.
Christensen,
No.
McGinnis,
No.
Schob,
No.
Ward,
No.
Washington.
No.
Motion lost 0-6.
Mr. Chair, I now move motion to amend number 2, a substitute ordinance. The changes, the definition of unsecured firearm to make the, meaning you can keep the firearm in the vehicle as long as the vehicle is secured and the firearm is not visible from the outside. It also changes first and second offenses to infractions, and the third to a misdemeanor.
Been moved?
I'm sorry, you need a second. Second.
Been moved by Mr. Christensen and seconded by Mr. Schob for motion to amend substitute ordinance number 2.
Mr. Christensen, would you take an amendment, a small amendment to your
Yes, I
motion?
think we've discussed this. Would you describe it, please?
Yes. It actually would be line 19, and I would move this amendment, I would offer this amendment, that the provisions of this section shall not apply to members of the Armed Forces of the United States, active or reserve, the National Guard of this state, or reserve officers training corps, or peace officers or those performing the duties of a peace officer or in training, or other duly authorized law enforcement officers.
So we're striking.
I'm striking on duty, and so I'm trying to put all officers, both armed forces, National Guard, Reserve, and peace officers in the same category of being exempted when they're performing their duties or in training.
That's a motion to amend yours.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to amend motion number 2.
Yes. Teresa, I will give you the language that I...
Thank you. That would be awesome.
Yes.
Any discussions on the amendment to motion number 2?
Well, basically, it's clarifying that
Officers.
Officers of the law, as well as people on active duty or the Guard or Reserve, when they're in training or basically fulfilling their responsibilities, they are exempted from this. But otherwise, they are not exempted from this.
Okay.
That is correct.
Any other questions? Call the roll on the amendment to the motion.
Bowers?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0.
Now we have the motion to amend number 2 on the table. Do we have further discussion on that?
I would like to
Mr.
ask Mr. Kirkpatrick from legal to come up and help me understand the difference between infraction and misdemeanor and...
Well, there's two differences. Under the city code, there are different penalties for that. But generally speaking, an infraction is considered a non-criminal offense, like a traffic ticket, a speeding ticket, or under the city code, a possession of marijuana less than an ounce is considered an infraction, not criminal. One of the practical effects is many times when you're filling out applications, for example, for a job, it will ask you specifically, have you ever been convicted with or charged with a misdemeanor or a felony? In which case, if you've had several infractions that you've been convicted of, you would not have to list those, and you'd still be honest. So there is a difference as far as how serious it's considered. And there's generally a difference in what the penalty is as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thoughts? So we'll be voting on the amended motion of the amendment number 2, which is replacing the ordinance with this. Please call the roll.
Bowers?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0.
Thank you, everyone.
Now on the main motion.
That was the main motion.
No, that was the motion to amend number 2.
Oh,
That was-
okay.
Yeah, now we have to do a final vote. Bowers?
Other comments? Yes.
Yes.
Please call the roll.
Can we make it?
Bowers?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0.
I cannot wait to read the minutes.
Yeah. Motion to amend the substitute ordinance. Thank you, everyone.
Resolutions on first reading are items 8A and B. Ordinances first reading are items 9A through I. Pending list date certain are items 10A through E. They all will come off for public hearing next week. Let's see, our regular pending list are items 11A and B.
Thank you.
Anyone wishing to address the council on matter not on this agenda and not planned to appear on a future agenda may do so at this time, since it is an open microphone session.
Anybody like to come forward?
I have a quick question. There was a gentleman who did want to speak on our last action. Would he be allowed to speak now that we've voted and passed it?
No.
Or is
No.
it still
It's on
considered
the
on the
agenda.
agenda?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's on the agenda.
Okay, thank you very much. That's good. He wants you to look at him.
Yes, sir.
Two things. Remember the golden rule, and I move for adjournment.
Second. On
And
both.
seconded, please call the roll.
Bowers?
Yes.
Christensen?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Motion carried, 6-0.
We are adjourned. Thank you.